you can extend the life of the resources just because the care managers and the people in this person's world know what the resources are and know how to get the most out of what you have.
In this episode of Wisdom, Wealth, and Wellness, Jonathan Satovsky talks with geriatric care manager and licensed social worker Christine Richmond about preparing for the realities of aging. Together, they explore how to plan early, manage family dynamics, and understand the cost of care while protecting long-term financial well-being.
Welcome back to Wisdom, Wealth, and Wellness podcast, where we explore how to live wisely, steward resources intentionally, and cultivate well-being across generations. Today, we have a special guest, someone who sits at the real intersection of these three pillars. Christine Richmond is a licensed master social worker, certified care manager, and certified dementia practitioner. See, I might be slipping. Oh boy, she'll assess. She's the co-founder of Care Collective, a firm that serves as the lifeline for families navigating aging, healthcare decisions, and the complex emotional terrain that comes with supporting the people we love. Christine brings decades of experience across hospice, long-term care, and home care, and she's known for designing care plans that protect the human being, not just treating the medical condition. Christine, it is absolutely a gift to have you here today. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
So let me start here. Every family, mine, yours, everyone listening, will eventually face aging-related decisions. But most wait until crisis hits. Your work is about helping people avoid that panic and instead move with clarity and compassion. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So here's the in finance we say don't try to time the market. Stay invested. In your world, families do the opposite. They time the crisis, calling after a fall, a stroke, or a sudden decline. From your vantage point, what is the theoretical compound interest of planning for age and care before you need it? How should people think about this?
Well, there's the compound interest to me, I think, would be the peace of mind knowing that you've arranged for somebody to jump into the problem with you when it happens, that you're not alone, that it's almost like an insurance policy. You've reached out, and people do this. We're about to meet a new family with the sole purpose of just meeting them to be prepared. This is a very high functioning woman. She doesn't need us, but she wants to have us ready for when she does. And so that's the value. So now we will know her, and should something happen, the family will call us. She'll call us in an emergency. We'll know her. We'll know her medical background. We'll know her social background. We'll know her family, her story. And if she's got to be in the hospital for some reason, we'll meet her there. We'll be able to advocate for her. We'll make sure that care path that the hospital people will set her on is the right one. It could be the difference between ending up in a dementia unit and heading home, with the right care at home, because somebody was there who knew her. That's the compound interest. It's the right care path, the right things happening, and avoiding a disaster. It's right there for you.
So many of our listeners, there's the sandwich generation. Many of our listeners, in theory, are probably ages 40 to 60, juggling a combination of aging parents and launching their own kids. What's the first piece of wisdom you'd give someone who tells you, I'm totally drowning. I can't manage this all?
Oh, no guilt. No guilt. You're pulled in too many directions, and everybody that's pulling you in a direction, they must be the most important thing, and you're feeling crushed. Our society is not built the way it used to be anymore. Everybody's making themselves a priority in your life, and you cannot do everything. So luckily, there are care managers around. You can decide where you need to be. And if you've got somebody around to focus on your parents, you can let them do that. You can steer that ship but you don't have to be present necessarily. You can be on the university tour while you've got somebody's feet on the ground where your parents live. That's the takeaway. And that is still providing care. You don't have to be sitting there in the doctor's office with them to be able to provide care. You're steering that. You're on the Zoom meeting with them, with the care manager and your parents. That is care. You're still doing that, and you don't have to feel guilty. That allows you to be in two places at one time. Don't feel guilty.
Brilliant. There's a lot of, I think, misconceptions about the system. You've worked across hospice, hospitals, rehab, long-term care, home care. What do you view as the number one misconception that highly educated, accomplished people have about how the healthcare system works for seniors?
Oh,
Or doesn't work?
I think probably the number one misconception among highly, highly educated people is that their insurance covers things. Medicare and commercial insurance and even the long-term care insurance that you've paid into for so many years, their parents have, doesn't cover everything. In fact, it may not cover much at all. And that is a real eye-opener for a lot of people when it comes time to use that insurance. And it's very discouraging when they realize how much is not covered and they're ill-prepared for the private cost and what's really out of pocket. That is a misconception that insurance covers everything. So we do a lot of education around what the actual costs of care is as people age. That would be the number one. I think another misconception is that the healthcare system is even navigatable, if that's a word. The healthcare system isn't really designed for you or me or even the medical professionals to navigate. It's not designed for us. It's really designed for insurance companies, I think, to serve themselves. I shouldn't be saying that, but everyone needs help. Even doctors need help. Families need help. And care managers have really gotten the hang of this. So we can help people get through all of the red tape.
It's a soulful place you're coming from. It's a beautiful thing.
Man.
Goodness that there's people like you in the world. Decision-making clarity, just thinking about this, you often say that your role is part social worker, part guide, part translator. What does that actually look like in practice, just to frame it for people? Because I think many people don't even know that care managers exist and what they do and how they can, be such a supportive, important resource in their lives and in their families' lives.
So when you're talking about decision-making, there's a lot of decision-making. We start with the people who were impacted the most, which is typically the individual who's receiving care. But there's levels to that. We are very big on autonomy and that each individual gets to live the way that they want to live to the greatest extent possible. Sometimes there's limitations to that, but we always like to drill down to find out what is most important to the person who's receiving care, always. And then we expand from there. We have to assess for how well that person is able to make decisions or how well they're able to comprehend what's possible around them. But there's a lot of nuances to that, as we know from working with people with dementia. A lot of things are possible. And then we're working with families to really understand that and to really participate in that person's life, to find the true meaning there, which is incredibly rewarding for everybody.
So, the theme of this podcast is wisdom. You've brought a lot of wisdom to that. We're going to jump into the wealth side of things. We're going to be a little creative here and talk about the return on investment for professional care management. In financial planning, it's unexpected costs that people have to plan or bear or anticipate to protect their autonomy and independence. But connecting to your world, the costs, risk management, preserving family assets, and most importantly, relationships. What it seems to me is that families sometimes hesitate to engage a care manager because they see it as just another cost. But in my world, the biggest unknown liability, in a plan, as mentioned, is the healthcare and aging. So can you share a story where having a care manager actually saves families a lot of money, which I've seen, but I just think
Oh,
that
yeah.
people need to be educated and or protect a financial and emotional disaster. I'm sure you experience this every
Sure.
day. Yeah.
Yeah, I can give you a couple of examples, but one really meaningful one to us was a family who came to us that was very quickly running through all of their assets, paying for a nurse, a registered nurse, to provide care around the clock per hour, 24 hours a day for the gentleman that required the care. And it was costing them literally, hundreds of dollars an hour for a registered nurse. And that was the perceived need. They thought they needed a nurse. At some point, somebody had said, you need a nurse. Whoever said that, what they meant was you need an aide, a home attendant. They hired a nurse. And over the course of a year or two, were depleting all of their resources. And an accountant for the family came to us to say, help stop this. We
The numbers,
reassessed.
give it a bigger number. I think you were saying something like
Oh,
90,000 a month, right? Something crazy.
something crazy like that. Close to 100,000 a month was leaving the bank account on this individual's care. So we came in and assessed him clinically to see what the need actually was. And what we determined is that he did not need an RN to come in. There was no clinical need that great. And so we swapped out the care to a lower level of care, which was absolutely adequate. We ran that by his doctors. We got the lower level of care approved. And we are now, the hourly rate went from maybe 300, 400 an hour to $45 an hour. And we're saving him over $50,000 a month, if you think about it.
That's no joke. Yeah.
No joke. And, the family wouldn't have known. They couldn't have. And it was such a stressful situation. And the relief they've had now that they've been able to extend the time that they can provide care for this person is great.
Brilliant.
They were
Brilliant.
really stuck.
I mean,
Yeah.
so that must happen often, balancing the best care possible. And I don't want to run out of money. Obviously,
Right.
you want the best care possible, but you gotta preserve resource. So I imagine there's a constant tension in every situation there. Yeah.
Well, absolutely, because the best care possible isn't necessarily what people think it is. Sometimes I guess the inclination is to say the best care possible is everything. Well, not so fast. At the beginning of an illness or at the early stages of something, the best care is maybe a little more minimal, or maybe there's some things that you're thinking out of the box. Maybe there's things outside of the home. There's things that Medicare does pay for. There's other activities. There's other things that don't cost a lot of money. But as you go through the continuum of care, as over the years of this person's illness, you can extend the life of the resources just because the care managers and the people in this person's world know what the resources are and know how to get the most out of what you have. We know how to really just what I'm saying,
Yeah.
use your
Yeah.
money wisely and know how far it will take you. And know even when the money is really at the very end, what your resources are after that. We know how to plug you into even state-funded resources when it comes to that, if it does. We can carry you right through.
Brilliant. Thank goodness there's people like you in the world. Family dynamics and inheritance tension. When a parent gets sick, I imagine money, decision making, and old family wounds can collide. I'm guessing, but
Yeah.
I assume you often serve as a neutral third party. How do you mediate those moments so families stay focused on what really matters?
I think that you said something very important is neutrality. Everybody's coming from a valid space in their mind. Even if I have an opinion, everybody is coming from their own place that I know very little about. So I'll take their word for it and I'll honor that family member's space where they're coming from. We'll believe that. If that's important to them, we'll hear that. But more than anything, we focus on the individual, what the clinical team has said that that person needs, what they've stated they want, and see if what the buy-in can be and bring the family around to what this individual's needs are clinically and what they've stated, and honor everybody else's viewpoint, but it has to come back around to this person. And there's some tough cases. And tough cases end up going back to sit with whatever elder law attorney or trust and estates attorney might be involved. But when we're speaking about the family tensions, maybe there's some family members that shouldn't be speaking with one another, and we can bridge those gaps, and we do. But when we're focused on our person and what's best for them, you usually can get a son or a daughter or a family member to agree they want what's best for their loved one.
Yeah.
I have never actually heard somebody say, I don't want what's best for my mother. People don't typically say that. And I think that's where we get the meeting of the minds.
About aging in place versus higher levels of care, what factors help you determine whether someone can safely age at home, which I imagine many people would like to do, versus needing a
Yeah,
different setting?
that's a good question. Typically resources and location, I would say. In a city like New York City, for instance, especially in Manhattan, a lot of services can come to people in their homes. It's a well-served area. And we have mobile emergency systems that can come and really help you avoid the emergency room in many cases. It's very possible to age in place there, believe it or not. The further outside big cities you go, it may be a little more difficult to get services in place that'll allow you to do that. Although when you have financial resources, you have a lot more opportunity to do that. To age in place well, you need to have the ability to bring in home health aides and nursing services for the most part. And you also, which may lead into another question, have to have a very clear idea of how you want to live and what your advance directives are. What would happen if there was an emergency, and what your decision-making path is. But it is possible to age in place. Your alternatives are assisted livings, um, independent livings. There's a whole continuum of care. Uh, and that's a longer conversation. And we have that often with families. And we're open
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
having those
Yeah.
conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the key, right? To try to navigate that. Like, this is like, I can help anyone get what they want if they only knew what they wanted. It's a wrestling of the pros and cons of each of the situations, I imagine.
Yeah,
Um,
that's right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So let's get into the wellness part, like human dignity, caregiver burnout, empathy, tie your ethos of mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being, like how do you talk a lot about compassion fatigue, I've heard. Caregivers want to be superheroes. They're often exhausted, overwhelmed, or on autopilot. What are the early warning signs someone is burning out, and how do you give them permission to step back?
That's a really good question. And compassion fatigue is very real, particularly when it comes to caring for people that you really love, but maybe there's been a lot of water under the bridge. um, a sign of compassion fatigue is when you just don't have the wherewithal to handle something anymore. You feel checked out. And it's a terrible feeling because you feel like you should care, but somehow you don't. And that's horrible. Um, that's not a moral failing. That is a sign that you're burned out. That's because you've cared so much. So when we see that, there's no blame there. There's no tisk tisk. There's no judgment. That means you have to take a step back. And we very gently say, hey, we got this for you. You need to take a break. Go somewhere for a little while. We've got you. And people do that. And then in a little while, they come right back in and join the team again. And it works. They have permission to
Heart,
do that.
yeah, the heart behind your work. You started volunteering. I think I read that you started volunteering in nursing homes at age 11. Wow, where does that deep empathy come from?
You know, uh, it's hard to know that, actually. That was a funny story that I had recalled. I did that on my own. I asked my parents why they made me do that, and they said they didn't make me do that. I just did it.
Mm.
Uh, that has, I think that's something that we're born with, and I was, and there's certain people that are. Lots of us are. It's why I was drawn to this work. Um, and it's hard to explain. Uh, but it's it's why I'm compelled to do this, and it's why it's possible for me. There's something very compelling about working with seniors. Uh, Compassion it comes naturally, I would say.
Lucky. They're lucky to have you. People are lucky to have people like you in the world. That's awesome. So, how about staying emotionally well in like heavy situations? I mean, you're walking with families through illness, dementia, crisis, end of life decisions. I mean, how do you stay grounded and replenish personally? Like, how can, because that would be important, not just, to share with the audience. There's probably other care managers that just need tips and tools to regain their
Yeah,
footing.
you're right. Um, I look at this two ways. There's absolutely the component where you have to be able to walk away at the end of the day and separate, keep some boundaries about what's work and what's not work, and make sure you play as hard as you work, and make sure you disconnect and enjoy nature and friends, and take care of your own mental health, and make sure you stay healthy. You exercise and you meditate, and you do all the things that you know are good for your body and soul. Those are sort of no-brainers, and we're taught that and we know that. But doing that in practice is very important, number one. But number two, when we have this temperament, people that tend to go in these professions tend to have this temperament. I find that working with people in these situations, even at the end of life when it gets really hard, there is a profound beauty in this. And it makes it very doable. I find this work very meaningful. And when I come home after what would maybe be described as a very, very tough situation, I don't always look at it like that. I come away thinking that was incredibly meaningful, and I was so fortunate to have been able to be part of that. So sometimes it's maybe a mind shift.
Attitude of the opportunity to contribute. Yeah. So there's a concept of the whole person lens. I deal with this in finance too, just like thinking about
Absolutely.
someone holistically, just not just the numbers, oh, how much money did you make or whatever. Like, it's just, there's so much more to giving someone that peace of mind. When you emphasize the medical needs should never overshadow human needs. What does that look like in real practice in your experience?
Well, that's a really good question. It's sometimes we miss the whole person because we get caught up in in taking care of the individual pieces of the medical puzzle, and we lose sight of what that person actually wants. There is a book that it's not even new anymore. It's called Being Immortal by Atul Gawande. A lot of people have read that now. But in there, he emphasizes knowing or asking, what is the most important thing for that individual? What do they really want at the end of the day, at the end of their life, to live well? If that's just that I get to eat ice cream every day, I don't care if you need to take my foot off, for instance, as long as I get to eat ice cream. Understanding what that is so that you could actually redirect the care and maybe forget about all this noisy care over here. Forget about taking care of this medical issue. I know that it might cause other problems, but we're not going to treat that. We're just going to focus on this. And this is what quality of life means to me. And focus on quality, not quantity. We lose sight of that sometimes.
Thank you for sharing. So what's one action for listeners who have an aging parent, who's healthy today? What is one document, conversation, or action that they should take, let's say this weekend, to prepare wisely or to begin, just raise their level of awareness of those of us that have aging parents? What should we be thinking about? Because I think these are tough things for people don't really want to confront, I imagine,
Well, sure. Just following from that, a conversation. What is the most important thing to you as you age? What do we need to know that will make your life quality? What do we need to know? And then what's actionable is to put that down on paper. If you don't have an advance directive, a healthcare proxy, or a living will, or a power of attorney, this is the time to get that done. Reach out to your elder law attorney or your trust and estates attorney and take care of that paperwork. Thanksgiving is actually a time that a lot of people do that because families are all together. Yeah. That would be the action item, to have that conversation and get that done.
That's good. We had a unfortunate incident where someone got in a biking accident, and the family didn't have copies of his power of attorney, healthcare proxy, living wills. They weren't organized with all of their documents, so they had to fight with courts to try to get both healthcare and financial care in place. So it sort of spurred some innovation on our side. We created this FinDash.ai to help people go from clutter to clarity of organizing documents to be able to help people intergenerationally, which is really something often overlooked. It's critical. Yeah.
It's important for anybody. So the children that are asking their parents should be doing it for themselves. It's not too early. Teenagers could be doing this. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Kids off to college. Yeah. It's a big
Kids
thing.
off to, 18 and on, really. You could do it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I heard about that. Some other parent was nudging me to make sure I have all my documents for my college-age child. So yeah, no joke. So not something you want to think about, but important to tie up, and get stuff organized. So, oh my God, thank you so much for your clarity and compassion for the work you do. You're really, you're helping families make some of the most important decisions of their lives with dignity and peace of mind. Where can people find you if they want to learn more or get support? Where do people reach out to seek your team's counsel?
Absolutely. You can email us at info@carecollectivehealth.org. Our website is www.carecollectivehealth.org. And that's it. I would even give you my cell number, but you're welcome to look us up online. We're happy to have a conversation with anybody who has questions.
Awesome. Any last words that you want to share? Any other tidbits that we might not have covered that salient points that people should be aware? Because I think this is really, with my understanding, the 85 plus population is growing faster than any other part of the population. What do people need to know? Like what did I miss that that they need to raise their level of awareness about?
Um, I think we've covered a lot. I think that people need to be focusing maybe on understanding the cost of care as they age and as illnesses pop up. Truly, people are always hit between the eyes of the cost of what things are, and in the amount of money that's spent in the last couple of years of somebody's life is astronomical. No one's prepared. So making sure your advance directives are in order, even when you don't need it. Like, you know, in your head you don't need it, you do. That's number one. And just maybe doing some math and working with guys like you, the wealth management guys, and getting your stuff organized. Get your stuff organized, your papers, and get organized. Understand your math, and you'll feel better. And just stay
Yes.
active and healthy and enjoy.
Yeah. I have two lessons I would share with the audience. Since most of us are sitting, 8 to 10 hours a day, sitting is the new smoking. So every 45 minutes, set a timer, get off your chair, stop staring at screens, either take a walk in nature, do some 90-90s on the floor, do something to be mobile, because lack of
Absolutely.
hip mobility is one of the first key attributes to the risk of dementia and Alzheimer's, from my understanding. So that's a really key takeaway I've
Absolutely.
learned. So I'm super super grateful that you spent the time. The work that you guys are doing is just extraordinarily important and meaningful, and I hope our audience had learned a lot from this. Please subscribe to Wisdom, Wealth, and Wellness on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts on your commute or on your jog or whatever it is that you might be doing. And until next time, thanks again.
At Satovsky Asset Management, we believe refined wealth deserves refined service. As fiduciaries, our mission is to protect and grow your wealth through disciplined advice, hyper-personal service, and multi-generational trust. Our clients stay because we don't oversell. We simply over-deliver.
FinDash gives you all the financial information you need. No searching, no guessing, just clear AI answers. FinDash.ai, turning financial clutter into clarity. Try it free.